Okay, we're all set. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance for Monday, May 18th, 2020 to order. First item on the agenda this evening is public forum. And I'm looking to see if there's anybody in the waiting room or in public forum, but I do not see anybody who would be considered public forum because we're all participants. So I'm going to move on to item number 2, approve minutes of, there's 4 sets. And I think I have comments on just about all of them, but we'll start with the special meeting of April 13th, 2020. Anybody have, actually, do I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Veronica?
Second.
Bob, a second. Okay, discussion or corrections. There were a couple of items that I did have. In order, page 3, under the right underneath the motion, the second paragraph, I believe that should be Ms. Millman. Ms. Millman. Right below on the paragraph where it says the motion failed, and then the next paragraph says Mr. Ailes noted that 14 or 15 of the letters submitted were in favor of a no tax or a no budget increase. On page 4, third paragraph, the second sentence I believe should read, just for clarity's sake, Mr. Ailes asked what is being done to help senior citizens stay in town, stay in town with regard to the elderly tax relief program. Still on page 4, the last paragraph, right in the middle, where it says she added that they are not seeing decreases in costs. And page 5, third paragraph, Mr. Trotta said they, I'm sorry, that's not the they. Mr. Trotta said that with regard to the governor's order. Anybody else have anything to add to that? Those are my comments. Okay, nothing else?
No, not here.
Okay. On all of these meeting notes, when I call the vote, I'm just going to call the vote, and if there's anybody dissenting or abstaining, just call it out. Otherwise, I'll approve. I'll assume that they're approved. So, all in favor of the meeting minutes for special meeting April 13th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody who oppose or abstain? I don't believe that's going to be the case in any of these, but just for clarification. Approved minutes of the regular meeting of April 20th, 2020. Do we hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Veronica and Jeff?
Yep. I have a comment
Go ahead, Ken.
on item 3.1 in correspondence. I wondered if there was anything further to report. I didn't see it in any of the correlated papers on the town getting this firm to perform the some restitution on the $53,000 amount in contention on the Adams windows. Was there any progress on that, or is that still pending?
I don't know. I know that the work is, I know I read in some of the Board of Ed meeting minutes that work was going to begin. I don't remember the date though. Mary Jane, Matt, do you have any idea, or Kristen or Linda?
No, we've not been updated since your last meeting and request. In the hands of the lawyers at this point. And Mike, thank you for sharing the information you shared relative to the firm doing business under a new entity. That was forwarded along to council.
Great. Okay. Anything else, Ken?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
had another item on item 4 of the minutes. If we go all the way down, I'm looking at two things here, go down to the page. I was interested in where we were on that issue of waiving tuition for children of BOE employees who are not residents of Guilford. That was left as an open issue. Dr. Freeman said they had tabled conversation at the board level, and I didn't see it appearing in any of the subsequent Board of Education. And so I assume this is still hanging fire.
Yeah, I would assume that it's waiting for public input and public, I think I read in their discussion in public, right? So that's going to
Yes.
hold off indefinitely until there's public meetings again.
But
Mhm.
yeah, through the
Yes.
policy. So that's, we're still waiting on that.
Still waiting.
Okay, good.
Anything else, Kevin? I don't believe I have anything. Oh, there was one little tiny item on page 8. In the third paragraph, second sentence, it just says, it should say all but one group has moved into the health savings accounts.
Yeah.
That's it. Just so we know that Al didn't move into the health savings account alone.
A1.
Anybody else?
There's a little bit on page 9, third paragraph. There's a sentence in there that just doesn't make any sense, but I actually cannot remember what I said. I'm wondering if maybe Tracy can look at the tape or something. Did we tape that meeting? Maybe not.
Yeah, they're all taped. Which sentence is it that you are referring to?
Third sentence. The real say is referendum, and it's not fair to voters to have it taken away.
Well, you probably, it's almost like, but it's,
Yeah,
I think that's pretty close, but I can't remember exactly what I said.
could you have said the real decision,
Or the real voice?
real voice?
Yeah, something like that.
I think the intent was that the real way for people to vote is through referendum.
the real way. That's probably,
Not fair to have it taken away.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Jonathan,
probably
is
what he said.
yeah, Jonathan, does that sound right? The real
Yeah,
way referendum?
That sounds about right. Just
Yeah,
I can-
okay.
I can
add
speak
up the
for
way
you,
it was.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And it sounds like say anyway, so let's call
Yeah,
it
pretty close.
First Amendment.
I do have one more on page 10. Fifth paragraph, starting with in addition. For clarification, probably should say, Mr. Hoey said the Board of Selectmen instead of they, so we know who they is. And then the beginning of the next sentence, they have taken those measures, or these measures.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I believe I made that decision under executive declaratory powers, and the Board of Selectmen endorsed it.
Okay, so is that,
Distinction.
okay. Do you want to reword that then, the way it's stated in that?
I think it's fine the way it is.
I just wanted to clarify who they is who made the decision.
How about the decision was made to grandfather every current participant in the elderly tax relief program for next year?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was your comment. I just thought it was, I want to be clarified who they was.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the next sentence, you've got hey as opposed to they.
Right. And a lot of letters follow up. All right, anybody else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh my God.
Any opposed or abstain? Okay, moving on, special meeting of April 27th, 2020. Motion,
Move to approve.
Second.
okay. Couple of items that I noticed. Page number 2. Third from last paragraph, right near the end, the sentence that says Mr. Trot, just to be just Mr. Trotta.
Hey.
Hey.
A, exactly. Add an A.
Page number 4, fourth paragraph. Ms. Malvasi said on the town side, she's estimating a surplus of 25,000, just a zero to be added there. The big paragraph that starts with Ms. Wallace, right about the middle, where it says they did this in 2009 and 10 when they gutted capital, and where it says they are going, I think it should say they may have to do that again. No decisions were made on what we were going to do yet. And second paragraph down on page 6, the last page. Second paragraph, third line down, salaries for essential workers. Anybody else?
I just have a quick question for Mary Jane. It's on page 5 where you were going to meet with the firefighters about the availability of grant funding. Anything come up out of that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, we did receive some funding through Medicaid that applied directly to their revenues. We also have a opportunity for a CARES grant, which is 90% funded. I don't remember how much I told you last time, but 90% funded. And of course, we also discussed Fema funding. I'll add that now the state may be offering full funding for our COVID-related expenses, so we're exploring that. We have been asked to continue to put everything through FEMA, just as a holding place in case there is any issue with the state funding, but we may be able to get full funding through the state at this point. So working closely with the fire department on all of these grant opportunities and trying to recoup every dollar we can.
Thank you.
If I could add something on page 4.
Yep, go ahead, Jeff.
In the paragraph, it says it starts with Mr. Beatty agreed with Ms. Wallace. The sentence in the middle of the paragraph, Mr. Beatty said a year from now, when they adopt, I think it should be when we adopt the next budget, we should be more informed.
And there's another they in the last few words of that paragraph. Yeah.
Because we may need it next year. In the last line.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions. Special meeting of May 7th. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second page. 1, 2, 3, 6 paragraph down. There's a zero missing on the 525. The first line. Third paragraph up on page 2. I finally got my name misspelled. It's fantastic. Love it.
Arr.
Just one of many variations of the last name spelling on my end. But later in that sentence, it should be, will result in a tax increase of 0.61.
Yeah, what about it?
Of instead of ud.
UD, yeah. I don't have anything else. Anybody else have any comments or corrections? Anything else?
It's something. Is it 4.1?
Bob, you had something?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. I don't know if it's this one or the next minutes. Let's do the next minutes. I'm obsessed with the doors in the schools.
I got one on page 5, paragraph 7, where it says, Mr. Trotter said he recognizes the urgency and is glad to see that they were exploring the possibilities. I was definitely trying to say something different. I was trying to say that I recognize the case they were making for urgency. And then I stated that I was glad to see that they were exploring the possibility. And the case they were making for urgency, they being the Board of Education.
Okay. Although I don't know if the Board of Education was really the one that was exploring that
I
possibility.
think I was referring to
That
a
was
case
more on
that
that
Dr.
was, I think-
Palestrini's letter.
Okay. All right, anything else?
No, thanks.
All right. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
I
Opposed, abstentions? All good. Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on to item number 3, correspondence, standing building
Mr.
committee
Chairman?
minutes.
Mike,
Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
just before we move off of minutes, I just
Yeah.
like to commend Tracy for doing a great job of getting all those minutes together. And for our review of them, there were a relatively small number of revisions that needed to be made. And I just wanted to commend her for doing a good job.
Here, here.
Yeah.
it's a lot of minutes.
Big round of applause.
Virtual round.
Okay, moving on to, as I said, building committee. I read through them. I'm just going to open up to any comments or questions regarding building committee.
I have a bunch.
Yep, go ahead.
On item 5, I believe it is, let me get my papers down here.
They moved a lot of things around in this meeting, so.
yeah, we went from 4:1 to 11.
Yeah, what page are we talking about on 5?
Page 5 would be, let me see where.
Oh, I think it's page 4. Page 4.
Yeah. Page 4, item 5, on performance contracting. The
Okay,
question of performance contracting, I wonder if there's been any progress on that yet. We've been waiting on that one for, I think, 3-4 months.
well, the only update would be what was indicated in the meeting minutes, that the numbers for the first year should be provided by the next meeting. So hopefully by next meeting, we'll have a little bit more.
Okay, and page 7, where in the world is that? What, these things are upside down. So we'll have that at the next meeting. And I noticed that there's still,
Mike, excuse me, Mr. Ailes.
Yes,
We had a preliminary meeting with Johnson Controls and ECG today to start going over the report. The reports need to have some adjustments made to it, so we did get some information today. Steve Neidorf from the town was included on the meeting with Cliff Gurnham and myself and Dr. Freeman.
Mhm.
So we did get some information. It's not finalized yet. We should be getting it in the next week or two.
okay. It looks like there's going to be more information at the next building committee meeting, though, as well. So we'll get it in hopefully a couple of different avenues.
I see they're moving forward on New England Road,
Yep.
and they've got another 16,000 that they are going to be authorizing or proposing on the preparation for it, I guess.
This morning at the board, Mr. Chairman, this morning at the Board of Selectmen meeting, the Board of Selectmen actually approved the change order for that contract. The rationale for same is that it was discovered late in the process that there is an alternative technology deployment related to tying into the old system that previously was not known to the Standing Building Committee, or nor were there any bidders who proposed same. The estimate is somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000 in the cost of construction if they proceed with this redesign.
Which that number was a huge savings to what they were Was that not, this new system that they had looked at, right?
Right.
Was a major cost savings to replacing the HVAC there in the building.
Yeah, between $250,000 and $300,000 are the numbers that Cliff Gurnan represented this morning.
Right.
Now, mind you, the overall project has still not yet been approved. This is, we're only in the design phase. And this was as a result of the use of some bond funds from 2016, 2017, which had identified the need to do this type of planning. And we still have adequate funds within that bond fund.
Great. Thank you.
I had a question on an item on page 4, section 5, in regards to the performance contracting.
Mhm.
Looks like in the last sentence, they said they also have to prepare some paperwork with the state. I was just curious what that entails. I didn't really know we had to submit anything to the state.
Matt, can you address that on the state
No.
paperwork?
No, I can't.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's probably more a question for Mr. Gurnham.
No, it's just mostly curiosity, right? to kind of
Linda,
get
do
the
you know?
Performance contracting.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Linda?
Yes.
Not so much.
Okay.
We had to file some paperwork with the state for the solar that was supposed to go on Public Works, that's going to go on Baldwin and Jones, in order to get some of the state grant reimbursement for those projects and get the project approved by the state. So those forms have been filed with the state. Now we're just waiting for the approval.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, because those are tied into other, that work was tied into other projects that were done that were getting reimbursed. Right, so that would make sense.
There's some kind of subsidy as well.
It's a standard grant reimbursement for certain projects that qualify. So those projects, the performance contracting work tied into some of those projects.
I'm just curious about I remember a terrific story that Dr. Freeman told about how satisfied they were with the security system of magnets on doors. And the state said, no, we're going to change doors. And at the time, I think he said it was $400,000. And there's on page 2, there's it's actually the second paragraph, it's the large paragraph there, third line from the bottom, about upgrading locks throughout the school at a cost of, and then again we go back to it again on page 6 in 14.1, the last paragraph, talking about more doors. I'm just curious about, is the state in a hurry for this? Is it coming at, I expected to see it in the bonding and was pleased that it wasn't. And what, are we under pressure to get this done?
I'm sorry, is this the Calvin Leet door and lock upgrades?
Yeah, that's one of it. And the other is, I was under the impression, unless I misunderstood, that all the doors in all the schools were going to have to.
No, they were doing lakes first and then hoping that this would work there and then they would move it on to the rest of the schools. That was my recollection.
Right. And of course, he was resisting it because he felt that our current system works perfectly well, satisfactorily, and yet, rules is rules. So I was curious about a timeline. Are we under pressure to get this done, or do we have any leeway?
Doesn't meet code.
Yeah.
Yeah, timeline wise, I don't know, but I know if the system doesn't meet code, I don't know if there's a certain amount of time that it has to be done by. I'm sure, like anything else, it's an ASAP, get it changed as soon as possible before there's any kind of an issue that, because of the code, affects life safety and there's an event.
Yep.
He's got a $40,000 price tag on that right now.
Right.
Well, that's one, and then
Always first.
and then
And that is the demonstration effort that Cliff relayed to us this morning when we approved this. This is the first test if these doors work appropriately and move and satisfy the needs. And you're right, Bob, there will be more coming.
Mhm.
There will be an evaluation after this is done. This is the way it was represented to us this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further on building committee?
Wonder if there was any more progress. There's a reference to in these minutes to the I think it's item 13, the update on school facilities needs assessment. I wonder if Linda could address that. Is there anything further on moving in the direction of preparing the needs assessment in the near future?
I know it's moving forward. I don't know what the timeline is for getting it done, started or done.
It
Have a date, I
appears,
can find out.
yeah, it appears, Linda and Ken, that from the meeting minutes, it was 2 to 3 weeks from after they complete the review. So I don't know how much longer they had to evaluate the schools. Maybe they'll have a report, a preliminary report by their next meeting, but possibly it's the meeting after that. But it does look like they're going through and evaluating the schools, which honestly is probably taking a little bit quicker to do because there's no one in the schools right now in terms of students. So they probably have a little bit more room to move in there as opposed to waiting. But we'll just keep that, we'll keep that tracking.
One question on item 7, the HVAC upgrades at Melissa Jones. Now we know that's off the bonding roster for this year, but the question is, it was raised by Gurnham, I believe, that the contractor would be able to help us realize some big savings if we proceeded with some elements of HVAC at Leet now in context with the work that will be proceeding on the bonding in Baldwin. Anything further on that?
Well, they're in the process of work, so hopefully there's some cost savings, but probably won't know until further down the road.
All right, Mr. Gurnham seemed to imply that it could be appreciable savings. That's why I asked.
If I'm reading it correctly, that was with regard to the HVAC up at Jones.
Right,
That's work that's ongoing.
right.
Thought was they may be able to complete it faster with no students in the building. So, and if they're able to tie it in with Baldwin, then maybe there'll be a savings. So I think we're going to have to just keep an eye on that one and see what happens.
Right.
As we're
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, we'll move to pension committee minutes. Any comments on the pension committee minutes or the investment report?
I had to do some numbers today to see how they were performing against the market, and it would be, and there's nobody here, well, Mary Jane, if when Chris gives his market flash report and he says, you know, the market went up, the market went down, if you could ask him to say how we did in relation to that, this would be much more valuable. By and large, I mean, you know, it's performing like a pension fund should. It's less volatile than the market is. And I'd be interested to see what today did to it. But
we happen to have a meeting Wednesday morning, so I can address that with them.
I'm sure I'd be pleased to. It just, he can show off.
Mary Jane, last Friday's report, do you recall from FIA how the portfolio was performing in terms of total dollar volume?
If you give me 1 second, I have it right here. The last one I have is as of May 8th. And we were at, hold on, I gotta make the numbers bigger so I can read them. 63.2 million as of May.
Do you recall what that is off of as a high?
The high, I remember, I'm gonna say no. I don't want to give a number.
That's fine.
We have recouped a significant amount, however.
We started at 64.7.
I remember us being as high as 67.
Yeah, I think we were close to 67 million. We're
It
down
was
to
a
maybe 10%.
Yeah,
10% drop, and it's coming back. And I mean, just the high in the markets was 20th of February, and then you gave that report as of the 28th of February when the markets had fallen 14% in 8 days. And, you know, and oddly enough, we closed today in the S&P at exactly the level of 28th of February today. So we're back to where we were at the end of February. So
I will note that the pension committee has requested weekly updates, and almost every week, Chris does give a synopsis of where the market is and how it pertains to our portfolio within an email that I send to the pension committee. So they are looking at it on a weekly basis as opposed to just those monthly reports that I provide.
great. And of course, the bonds, you know, there's a high percentage of bonds in there. They're not moving around much. That takes a lot of the volatility out.
Yeah. Right.
Right, they recently did some rebalancing of the portfolio to help with that as well.
Yep.
Anything else on pension?
No, thanks.
Okay. Item number 4, review and accept a report of expenditures for the Board of Education for April 2020. We have Linda, and we have our reviewer for the month of April, Kristen Peck. Kristen,
All right, thank
it's
you.
all yours.
Okay, expenditures for the month of April were $4,302,601. This is 76.41% of the budget as compared to 79.18 as it was last year. This is attributed to not buying school supplies, some special transportation like field trips and athletic events. We're not paying for busing for those. Revenue for April was $3,698. Some of this was just parents paying for pre-K tuition and some Medicaid. Purchased services is less than last year. Just some noteworthy items here. The telephone and internet line is currently over budget due to a delay in the receipt of credits for the E-fund rating, for the E-rate funding. But we are expecting that once we receive about $17,000 in refunds, that the telephone and internet will be back within budget. Tuition, we are still paying most of those tuition, so we're not seeing a benefit or we're not seeing any profitability there with regards to the schools being closed. Supplies and materials are under budget, though we are spending money on things like masks and extra cleaning supplies, but we still expect that we'll be under budget there through the end of the year. Transportation, we will have some savings there. We do have to honor our bus company contract and our gas contract, but again, we're not paying for special services like field trips and things like that. And we have negotiated a better rate with the bus company so that we're not paying the full amount, we're paying a reduced amount there. So we do expect that we will have a surplus, not much of one, and who knows how long that's going to last as we start trying to think about how we're going to go back to school in the fall and everything that we're going to wind up needing to try to make that happen safely for kids. So I guess it's good news for the time being. The warrant that we are submitting for all payments for the month is $1,782,030. The noteworthy items in the warrant I thought were primarily transportation, which I've kind of touched on. I know you guys all received a copy of that. So Linda and I can certainly answer any questions that you have about anything else from April.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Anybody? Go ahead. Ken, go ahead.
I think the employee benefits were up. I wondered about that. Why are the benefits up?
Employee benefits are up.
We have a note that it's due to additional expenses that are a result of the 2018 and 19 workers' comp audit of the actual salary expenses. I obviously will defer to Linda for more details on that.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest difference. The other ones are small differences that are mostly timing. I mean, unemployment is way down from last year. The life insurance and disability insurance is just a timing matter. Those should be fine. And we had the results from the audit, which resulted in us paying an additional $12,000 based off of the prior year's workman's comp insurance. So that puts it over budget just a little bit.
Linda, is that an annual audit, or is it every 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or is that something that happens each year?
It's an annual audit. They used to do our premiums off of an estimated salary, and now they've changed it, so they're not doing it that way. So we're hoping that these variances that we have to pay through the audit aren't going to be as big, but it is an annual audit.
I'll note that the town has a similar expense on their end for the same audit.
If I could go ahead.
Jeff, go ahead.
I noticed substitute teachers are down. Is that going to be a trend that you expect to continue throughout the remainder of the school year? I mean, have there been many teachers calling in sick during the shutdown of the schools?
The usage is way down. I don't know specifically about calling in sick. I know we were using some teachers, so substitute teachers already for long-term absences. But I think for the most part, most of the teachers, it's not just a day absence. I don't think we've had too much of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone way down since then. Shut down.
Thanks.
How far under are we on supplies and materials?
No, overall, not much.
Not a huge amount.
Right now we're at 59% of our budget expended. Last year at this time we're at 76%. So there will be some of that spent. We always do. I know a couple of the principals have contacted me and said they still need paper, they still need some things. So we're going to be spending part of it, but not a lot of it. And the remaining 173,000 of that, some of that will go unspent.
Purchase services. There's a couple of items there. Legal. Understanding that we're over on that. Are we pretty much, I mean, is legal at this point pretty well finished up? We're not going to be, or what do we, so this is, how much more do we think we're going to be going over on legal?
Well, we just got about $12,000 in legal bills for negotiations for trying to work MOAs with the unions as a result of the shutdown. We have 2 contracts that we're supposed to be negotiating right now that we're trying to do a 1-year extension, hopefully. So there's going to be some more legal. I'm hoping it's not going to be more than another, with the ones we've paid in May so far, maybe another 1,000.
Okay, so that line item will grow
Yes.
a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But those are more district-wide type of expenses, though, I'm guessing, right? The memorandum of agreements. Are you getting any and without naming names or giving any information, but are there individuals or families that are coming with claims as a result of the learn at home and that type of thing? Or is that So can we expect anticipated legal expense as in response to those types of events?
We haven't had any right now.
You'll get
don't know what the future is going to bring with that.
Right.
Right now, there aren't any.
Okay.
Looking at the line of special services transportation, are kids still being moved around in this pandemic to various special services sites?
We are not doing any actual transportation, but under the governor's executive order, where we've been asked to try and make arrangements with these contracts, we have negotiated reduced rates with all of our special, well, one so far of our special ed providers. So we are still paying, but we're paying at a reduced rate.
Yeah, I see most of the bills that are in here under the warrants are for expenses incurred right up through the close down.
Right.
You know, so what are we to anticipate in the month of April?
Very little.
Actually, we really didn't finish to get negotiation, a settlement agreement with them until the last week or so. So next month, for April, they're really, I mean, for May, there's going to be some bills starting to come in, and one of the companies already billed us from the day of the shutdown to the last day of what should have been the last day of school. The discounts are ranging between 40 and 80% of the.
Mm-hmm. You had something in your note, Linda, about the transportation costs and about getting something prorated, some credits prorated on unused gallons. Could you explain that? We going to be seeing any fuel savings?
No.
Most of that fuel's already been purchased, right?
Yeah, we have a contract for a certain number of gallons. So we have to pay out for the gallons that we don't use, but it is at a slightly lower rate. So we had 63,000 gallons of unused diesel that we have to pay for, or 33,000 gallons, sorry, 33,000 gallons of unused diesel that we have to pay for.
I see.
Good. So we still buy it, but we pay a lower price for the stuff that they don't use.
Right.
Right. Do we have any big tanks around we can fill up at these prices?
A good question, Bob. The oil company that we use used to actually charge us for that type of storage. This is also an item that has come to the attention of the State Department of Education. They have asked, the state has asked both the town and the Board of Education for any of these contracts where we have an obligation to pay for stuff we don't use. And I believe both Mary Jane and Linda have submitted information along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
There is a hope or an anticipation that we may be able to recover some of those costs.
It does make sense.
Yep.
And this is a little bit off topic, but you can't help but think about this. The last time we spoke with Dr. Freeman, in anticipation of how things might have to go in the autumn when we reopen, if we have to put on extra bus services for 2 days or whatever else. I know the state says we've got to have a seat for every child in the school system. But Linda, do you happen to know what our current, what capacity was, what we're actually using?
I don't remember what the actual the current capacity is. I'd have to look for it.
Yeah, okay. It's a little unfair to ask, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, the only thing that Paul mentioned in our last meeting is that the capacity of a school bus is, I think he said 70 kids. And if the kids have to be 6 feet apart, they would only be able to fit 15 kids on a bus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense.
More reason to save the diesel if we can.
Yeah. Well, it's finding new buses. It's finding new buses that's going to be the challenge.
For the right price, I'll drive one.
There were a couple others I had just on electricity. Seems to be at 97%. And it's a, that's usually a big number. Just wondering, do you have any knowledge of or reasoning regarding that being almost expended when the electricity, what's being run? I know the schools are being run, but a lot of people would think, well, electricity is probably being saved because the schools aren't open, which I know is not necessarily the case, but it's close to 100% already with 2 months left. So just wondering what the reasoning is behind that, if you know it.
We're looking into that. We're not really sure why it's a little bit higher. We know part of it had to do with the issue at Cox and that other meter, but we're still trying to get some answers on some things with the electricity.
Okay.
There's also a $12,000 encumbrance on there, which bumps it up a little bit higher, but it's still running higher than you'd expect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be good to look into. And then security looks like it's maybe last year was just very low compared to where we are this year. I don't know if there was any particular reasoning on the security being almost spent, or is that just a timing issue?
No, the security has to do with the visitor identification pass system that was installed as a test at one of the schools. So
Okay.
that was a cost that it was incurred this year that we didn't have last year. I think it's at the high school. It's a ID badge system for visitors.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Scans your driver's license.
The last one I have is just on the next page on supplies materials under athletic. That amount spent being at 92, is that in preparation for next year already, or what's causing that to be trending as high as it is, where, both in comparison to last year and where we are this year and the situation we're in this year with no athletics in the spring?
A lot of this was done, was all done before the shutdown.
Okay.
So there were some additional things that were purchased early. At the end of the year, we always kind of balance out the athletic accounts with some of the funds from the student activity funds, from gate receipts. So there may be some credits coming back to this to help balance it out a little bit. But already placed all the orders for everything for the spring sports. Everything was done early, and then we shut down and we didn't do any sports.
Okay. All right. That makes
It's up in
sense.
I'm sorry?
Except for what?
I said it sets us up for a good
Oh, yeah.
year.
Yeah, it's not like the items are going to go to waste. It's just
Right.
they were already purchased, so they'll get used in the future, just not when they thought they would be this spring.
Right.
All right.
I have a big question for you.
Ken?
The last item on the Board of Ed meeting of April 29th, where Dr. Freeman referenced the launching of a parent survey on distance learning and what we've learned, and the fact that he's already secured about 600 responses from parents. And I'm wondering whether we're going to be getting some kind of a report from him on what the needs are, surprise needs that he'll have going into the new year. We don't even know what's going to happen. We don't know if the schools are going to reopen. But one thing we do know is that parents are going to be loaded with opinions. And according to his early readout, most of the reaction has been very positive. Is that safe to say that that's sustaining itself? That people are very happy with distant learning? I know Dr. Freeman's been very positive about it, but I'm beginning to be concerned about the implications for the coming year. Be good to have some update on that.
I can ask Dr. Freeman to provide an update for that to you. I don't want to misspeak and give wrong information on that one.
And he has mentioned that he will make public in some kind of organized capacity the results of that survey. So
Sure,
I
he
do
will.
expect to see something from him after he gets to cull through every response that he's gotten. but it's hard. I mean, as a parent, and it's not easy. It's,
No
I
better
was gonna
than-
say,
Yep.
yeah, we all are
Very
wearing a
hard.
lot of hats, lots of hats. The days are very long.
And we all are loaded with opinions. I'd like to see that systematically presented. I think it'll help everybody in terms of what the financial outlook is for all of us.
Right.
On the Operations Committee meeting of April 6th, just on the second page, there was noting, and we already know about this, and I think we asked the question before, but I just want to confirm. We have been donating supplies to Guilford Emergency Services, Yale New Haven Hospital. I guess the question is, I know that on the school lunches and the food services, we are getting reimbursement for that at a certain level. Are we also getting reimbursement on the supplies that we're donating right now? Or in the future? Are we going to get reimbursement or some? Right.
I don't know.
Not sure if we're getting any reimbursement on them.
I mean, it's the right thing. Don't get me wrong. It's the right thing to do. And I know that it was important to do so. I just didn't know if there was any money or reimbursement coming back from any federal program or grant or something along those lines, or if it's, I don't know if
I think
it's
it's just
considered a
that, a
FEMA
donation.
expenditure, probably not, but Veronica, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's just that, a donation.
Yeah. And I commend the school system for doing it. I was just wondering if anything comes back for that, that's all.
Yale New Haven Hospital especially.
Yeah, well, they needed it and we donated it. It was the right thing to do. So just, you know, in the future, if there's any kind of a line item or a budget increase there, that could be, you know, another area of where we're gonna have increased expenses because we had to replace more, so. Anything else, Board of Education? Any warrants, meeting minutes? There was a lot of background information on the profile and performance reports for the school year, 18, 19. I think there was also the previous year. Linda, was there anything in particular in those documents? Was that just for informational purposes that was shared, or were there particular reasons that was shared?
It was given out, and there really wasn't a lot of discussion about it. There's going to be further discussion at the next meeting.
Okay.
So they were handed it out for them to review prior to the next meeting.
It's great data. Unfortunately, I didn't have like 4 hours to go through the data and look at all the numbers. But I mean, but at least we
There's a lot
have it.
there.
If we ever want to look at it, we know where it is and we have it in our possession. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
Anything else for Kristen or for Linda before we move on? Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures of the Board of Education for the month of April 2020 in the amount of $4,302,601.13.
So moved.
Moved.
For a second? No, Veronica, Jeff?
Second.
Got it. I'm going to do a roll call vote on this one just for officiality's sake. Let's see. Veronica Wallace.
Aye.
Ken Gammerman.
Aye.
Mike Ailes. Aye. Jeff Beatty.
Aye.
Jonathan Trotta.
He's muted.
There you go. Aye. Bob Hartman.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions or recusals? Great. Kristen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. You're free to stay with us if you'd like, or you can find something, I'm sure, not nearly as good to do as this. So.
I actually am going to say goodnight. I've got some little ones that I need to go tuck in. So thank you for having me this evening.
Well, thank you
Tomorrow's
for
a
being
school
our
day,
reviewer.
Kristen.
Good night,
Thanks,
Kristen.
everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night, Kristen.
Take care.
Aye.
Bye.
Insurance card, are you? Thank you.
Item number 5, review and approve report of expenditures for town government for April 2020 Mary Jane.
Okay, we'll start with revenues.
Okay.
Revenues overall are 100.1% collected, which is good news. It's just slightly lower than we were last year, but exactly where we were 2 years ago. All of the ECS money is in. We received more than budgeted as we had anticipated, plus the additional 80,000 in excess costs that we discussed last month's meeting, or maybe not last month, but the last time we discussed this, which the Board of Ed has chosen not to request since they anticipate a surplus. Obviously, if something happens and that changes, we might have to give that to them, but at the moment it is in the town side of the budget. I am still expecting one more grant from the state for another 65,000, which will put the other departmental line into a surplus as well. Most of our departments this year will still come near their budgeted revenues. Departments such as the building department, town clerk, health, golf, and park and rec may not meet their budgets due to the nature of those revenues during COVID. However, as things begin to open up, such as park and rec, I anticipate seeing these departments hopefully increase over time. Since we always love to talk about interest income, even though that number has decreased or over the last couple of months, we still expect to meet or exceed our amount budgeted, and that's thanks to the big increases we had the first half of the year. Overall, we still anticipate a surplus as we currently are doing already, but I still am sticking to my number of 275 at the moment. Any questions on revenue?
Yeah, I had one on fire. I think last month you seemed concerned about revenue on fire, but it does seem to be up.
Yes, our calls were actually down for a little while, believe it or not, even through the COVID, but we have recouped some of that over the last month.
I think the issue there is there are less ambulance runs related to motor vehicle accidents, et cetera, but more on the health side.
Right, and as I noted earlier, we also received, I believe it was $24,000 of Medicare payment to help recoup some of our lost revenue, so that helped with it as well.
Notice as well, the park and rec is understandably down by about 20% in revenue, but I noticed that youth and family services is up. Can you address that? We're getting more.
Youth and Family Services has been doing an exceptional job of still meeting the needs of all of their clients through different mediums such as telephone, Zoom, that type of thing. So they are still working with their clients. So we are still seeing the revenue generated from that area.
Just a quick note, they are down from where they were a year ago. And that's as a result of the fact that prior to the governor and the state of Connecticut changing policy, they were not able to conduct telemedicine with Medicaid patients. They now are able to do so. So that's more like they actually had to drop several of their cases that longstanding patients because they weren't covered.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. First Selectman, do you expect that policy is going to remain in effect even when we go, quote unquote, back to normal? Do you think they'll be able to continue to do telemedicine, or?
I do. Everything I
do
understand.
too.
Everything I understand is that this is a policy shift as it relates to delivery of healthcare at the
The
national
private
level.
sector is doing it, so there's no reason why Medicaid shouldn't be.
Right.
No, I agree. It's just,
Yeah,
it'll be another way for them to generate revenue
Yeah.
without finding folks to come in.
Well, as you can well imagine, one of the concerns with telemedicine is similar to the concerns that a lot of folks have with Medicare and Medicaid, and that's the fraud aspect that so often follows, not so often follows, but often pops its head up when we find these cases of people completely abusing the system. That has been the reason that Medicaid has not been given the opportunity, had not been given the opportunity to do telemedicine.
Okay, anything else on revenues? Okay. Expenses?
So expenses on the town side are down slightly from where we were last year, although, as we all know, all of our departments are up and running. Registrar of Voters will show the largest savings since the primary and the referendums are not being held this year. They will experience additional costs next year. The Board of Selectmen was just approved seeking some state grants this year that will offset some of the costs due to COVID, such as PPE equipment and some additional IT. So we did discuss with the Board of Selectmen this morning that those additional savings in this year, we will look to possibly carry over since those costs will increase next year.
Mm-hmm.
You'll notice on the report that the insurance line is overdrawn at the moment, and that is purely a timing issue. The waste transfer station and the library cover the costs of those departments, and those will be coming in by the end of the year, which will more than cover that overage. Legal is also down, mainly because negotiations are working somewhat slower than we normally would be because of COVID again. We've been moving forward to the best of our ability, and so there are expenses that we've incurred and will continue to incur. Again, any surplus in this department, we will want to discuss the possibility of carrying that over into next year because the negotiations will continue on through the next year.
And that's with 5 bargaining units, if I'm remembering correctly, right?
Correct.
Yes.
It might be low now, but we're going to catch up.
Correct. So that's why, we'll want to discuss what to do with the surplus come the end of the year. Golf expenses. Oops, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, all of those negotiations are currently active. In fact, there's a negotiation session tomorrow morning with the police department. We did settle an extension with the fire department. This was offers and counter offers that had been made prior to the shutdown, the COVID-19 shutdown. That was approved by the Board of Selectmen first meeting in May, as I understand. As I recall, yeah. And that was all we talked about was wage treatment, and it was a 2.25% for 1 year. So you can see that may have set the floor for some of the other negotiations, at least on the first year, or for those who would consider an extension as well.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move on unless there's any more questions.
Anything else on expenses that the legal was the only question that I had, but you answered it, so.
The only thing else I was going to mention on expenses,
Yep,
that the capital, I'm calling it a soft hold. Departments have been very careful about requesting items that they really need at this point because they all know that the Board of Selectmen is looking at each and every capital and all large purchases very closely to be sure that it's not something that can be held off. A few were addressed this morning at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, but capital, that's the reason capital expenses are down at this point.
Mary Jane, can you touch on the building line, I guess contracted services?
The contracted services line is one that historically has been going over as we receive additional revenue for large projects on the revenue side. So we have, through this year, the need to cover those costs at year end. In our 2021 budget request, we have increased that budget to a level that we have been using over the past few years. That line item originally was used to help with the expense of the Guilford High School, and the high school project covered those costs, and now it's being used for large, mainly commercial projects. So the additional revenue on the revenue side typically offsets this expense.
I was kind of hoping for a typo.
Not on
I
this
got
one.
one more question, just out
Sure.
of curiosity. Did we have to buy any PPE? I
Yes.
see the police have masks, and I would assume the fire department's got to handle the patients. And did we have
Yes,
to buy?
we have buying PPE right along, particularly for the emergency services folks. Our respective chiefs and a deputy chief early on in the process went in with the town of Wallingford on a significant order for PPE. We also had, it's a little known secret, the strategic stockpile for our 5-town emergency region happened to be in one of the Guilford Fire Department facilities, and we distributed what we needed to the other. But that stockpile has not been raided in a number of years, so that was intact. So we were in very good shape there. Additionally, we have purchased some PPE for employees, as well as the town. I think you may recall we had the distribution of masks a few weeks ago. Those were purchased with town money, but the anticipation is those funds will be restored or returned to us through the CARES Act and or at 75% by FEMA.
That was a follow-up question. Thanks. Yep.
I had a question. Jonathan, you have something else there?
No, that was my follow-up question with the FEMA money coverage.
Just in noticing the warrants, I noticed that the fire department had purchased a lot of fire safety materials, antibacterial and all COVID-related stuff, about $8,000 worth of material. And I hadn't seen anything comparable from the police or any other major department in town, and wondered whether we might anticipate similar purchases in these other operating departments.
And if you look a little closer, there are other departments. I know Public Works has purchased stuff. I know Finance has purchased things. It is popping up in different areas. And the police department, I believe, is sharing resources with the fire department. That is pretty typical. They coordinate their emergency services response and planning activities.
So these are ongoing purchases and all under control and anticipated.
Yeah, you can only use masks so many times. Gloves are a one-time wearing, and the Purell and those kind of things, they wear out after a while. So you can fully expect that we'll be ordering these things for the foreseeable future with some degree of regularity, with the exception of getting ahead of it and buying in bulk. Pam Millman in the purchasing department is currently putting together a sizable purchase on these types of materials: masks, gloves, Purell dispensers, which will now be placed in each one of the town buildings. We're going to have on-the-wall dispensers. There's a series of things that we have to do based on the guidelines for reopening business. We fall under the office capability and criteria. And it's not only these items, but also general cleaning. Common areas, common spaces have to be washed repeatedly throughout the day. So there will be additional cleaning items, cleaning products purchased as long as we're under the threat of this virus being spread.
Printers, copiers, those types of areas need that extra level of
Yes.
sanitization equipment.
Exactly. Even things like, I've seen the water coolers here in Town Hall, just the buttons to activate the cold water to fill up your cup. The town employees are going to be instructed if they use those things, to use gloves to do so. Same thing if you need to take the elevator. When you get in the elevator, you ought to have a pair of gloves, or use your bumble chute, right, Bob, to point at to point at the button. But these are all the considerations that we're going through. We sent out an extensive document to the town employees late today about the reopening and those kind of precautions that need to take place.
Speaking of masks and gloves, I noticed in one of the messages that you sent out, the amount of gloves and masks that were thrown on the street or the sidewalks. Who's picking up the cost, and what impact does that have in terms of municipal services to clean up that type of stuff?
Well, I tell you what, I keep a pair of gloves in my car, plastic gloves. If I see anything on the side of the road or whatever, I go pick it up and throw it away. It's, most of them are being done at the commercial lots. Where we've seen most of it is at the Big Y shopping area, some up at the Fresh Market. Typically, those are private facilities, so they're responsible for cleaning those themselves. My message, and thank you for mentioning that, my message was larger than that, just that no one should be disposing of those things in public. They should be putting them in receptacles instead of throwing them out your window. And literally, it was interesting to watch how many masks and gloves were underneath the carriage of cars in the parking spaces. So people didn't just take them off and drop them outside. They took them off, dropped them, and hid them underneath so people wouldn't see where they were leaving them. So
I have three quick things. First one, please, for Mr. First Selectman. I was interested in the stockpile. Is this almost opportune? I mean, doesn't that stuff have expiry dates if we haven't touched it in a long time?
The N95s do, but even an expired N95 is better than your band or your thing. They refresh that stockpile every couple of years, every several years. So yeah, there were some there that were expired, but as we said, we've gotten ahead of that curve, and we have not legitimate. We have unexpired PPE for our emergency responders. Okay. Good question, though.
And two quick things for Mary Jane. And one, just please remind me, this overage at the waste transfer station, we moved an expense to there from where?
The overage at waste transfer, what I was talking about earlier?
Yeah.
It's in the insurance line.
Insurance line, that's what it was. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know somebody's going to ask me about that. And then down in labor, big savings in labor. Were we expecting trouble?
That's what we discussed with the negotiations. We have 5 contracts currently under negotiations, but even though we're still moving along, we're not as far as we might have been at this time. So we'd be looking to carry over.
Roll that over.
Some of it, yeah. Well, actually, I approved a couple of bills today from our Labor Council on, I believe it was their March billing. So we've got April, May, and possibly June coming.
Right. I do anticipate expenses, but there will be money left over at the end of the year.
I noticed also, just to get out in the open air and talk about trees for a moment. I noticed that we had incurred about $26,000 in tree removal costs, and I wondered how that budget line was doing. When you look at the spreadsheet, it looks okay, but that's an area we usually are overdrawn in.
Well, I do talk to Kevin regularly about that line, and he tries to stay within budget when he can. And if he can't, then there are sometimes trees that have to come down. At this point, we're doing okay. If you say it is, I have to look, but
$26,000 this month.
Right. I know there was a significant amount of money expended in this warrant. Yes.
Sometimes Mother Nature helps push it along too.
Correct.
Right. There were a lot of branches down a couple weeks ago.
time of year. This is the time of year that we're doing this type of work, so.
you know,
And it's also the ash borer. There are a lot of dead trees. And I
With
think the state was looking actually at doing something to reimburse municipalities for the ash borer. I don't think that's going to materialize. One of the things that was very beneficial, and this comes as a result of Kevin McGee's strong relationship with Eversource. There are portions of northern Guilford that have been historically whacked time and time again in any kind of storm, particularly around the county road area. Eversource stepped up and did a significant amount of tree trimming and cleaning and removal in that part of town. They have a different fiscal calendar than we do. They're January 1 through December 31st. And Kevin had worked them hard to get out of the gate in January with their new budget to do a lot of stuff that we might have had to have paid for before.
he's a good man.
He is. But I will also say this. Every year he comes in and asks for more than we give him.
Yeah.
That's been going on for years.
Yeah.
And he gets even.
Long man last.
Anything else on expenditures before we move on to warrants? Anything on warrants, special or the 2 5/18 warrants, weekly?
I wonder where that land acquisition cost was incurred. $1,500 under special funds.
That,
Those are legal related for negotiations that are currently underway by the Land Acquisition Commission. And I'm not at liberty to disclose what those are, other than those are bona fide legal expenses related to targeted properties that the Land Acquisition is working on.
okay. I do not see anything on my end. Go ahead, Mary Jane.
I was just going to note that there is, there's some processed stone. Is that what you were looking for, Ken, from the land acquisition?
That was, yeah, that was the description.
Right. That's some work, according to the description, that's some work done by Park and Rec on Sullivan Drive.
It didn't say legal. It had.
Correct. It's processed stone.
Sorry?
My apologies. I thought you said legal earlier.
No. Okay.
Anything else on warrants? Medical.
Medical.
Yeah, good.
You'll see that the April claims are very low.
Yeah.
Understandable at this
Yeah.
point. Dentist offices are closed, elective surgeries weren't happening, doctor's offices weren't seeing patients. Not hard to believe that the expenses for the month of April were down, and I would anticipate they would be the same in May, and maybe ramp up a little bit in June as we start to open some of that up.
And those levels of claims, I would assume, are also affecting the catastrophic claims as well. I mean, does it?
Yes and no.
Yes and no, right?
Yeah, because if you have a real medical condition, all of that, you still went to the doctor. You still
have to get your treatment for that level. Yeah.
It may have some effect. It certainly, I won't say it doesn't, but my guess is that, if I were in that category, I was probably still going to the doctor. But again, we don't know who and what those cases are, so it's hard. It's hard for us. We're just guessing.
But there is a possibility. Looking at the trending, it looks like there's a possibility that we may not hit that premium.
Correct. I did report that same information to the Board of Selectmen this morning.
Mhm.
We are at about 55%. But I also note that our consultants tell us that our goal is 70. Anything over 70%, you know, is beneficial to the town. So you've heard me report that before, and
Yeah.
at the rate we're going, we're most likely hit at least that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I don't have a crystal ball.
Nor does any of us, I don't think. If anyone does, speak up now.
I'm just curious, Mary Jane, can you
There
tell
is.
us why 70% is like some kind of magic number where we sort of break even with the ISL, or?
I'm not sure if I can, Linda may help me explain it a little bit. Our consultants tell us that 70% is our goal when we negotiate with Anthem. Clearly, they want to make some money. We want to have some savings, and there is a cutoff there. And so our consultant has told us time and time again that the 70%, anything over 70% starts to work in our favor. I'm not sure if I know how to explain that any better.
When we get the final number, then maybe you could ask and or even provide a document from them or something if it comes down to that, just to, you know, indicate what the 70% number is and why.
I think it should be noted that we have, for lack of a better term, beaten the insurance company for about 5 or 6 years in a row
Yeah,
on
that's true.
thing. And they have a way of catching up with you. They don't like to lose money too often. So I think my bet is we're net positive over the last 5 to 7 years on this ISL.
Yep.
Again,
For sure.
this is one of those accounts where you don't necessarily want to beat the ISL number, because that means you got employees who have a lot of catastrophic illness.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
If we don't really have claims that are covered that are greater than the premium we paid, would we consider next year reducing it or adjusting it, or are we going to keep the same kind of catastrophic coverage that we have now?
Well, we've already agreed to numbers for next year, so those numbers are set. They are obviously based on where we have been the last few years.
An average, right?
Yeah, we can certainly ask that question.
Okay, I wonder if our staff is getting younger on average. Healthier,
I came
younger.
to town, yes. No,
They seem to go hand in hand sometimes.
not sure.
All right. Well, we'll obviously continue to track that. So.
And to offset that, Jonathan, a catastrophic claim can often be a young mother and child with a difficult birth.
Yep.
So the catastrophic claims
Yeah, it
are
affected you.
not necessarily based on age, and we do know that cancer strikes all ages. So it's probably hard to, put that in a box.
Very true.
Good point.
I would say on average, though, the younger do better. Sorry.
That's the insurance model.
Yeah.
The 20-somethings are the ones that keep insurance rates down for people my age. Not quite yours, John. You're not there yet, but
He's creeping there.
Not that far away.
Anything else on medical? All right.
I just wanted to add one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary Jane.
I just wanted to keep you abreast on a monthly basis on where our refunding of our bonds are. We have established our financing schedule with a close of June 24th. The draft of our official statement is already being reviewed at this point, and we've scheduled our rating agency calls for June 1st. So we are moving ahead.
Great. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, if nothing else, then I will request a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town for the month of April 2020 in the amount of $1,804,218.
So moved.
Ken?
Yep.
Veronica, second. I'll go vote by roll call. Veronica Wallace,
Aye.
Ken Gammerman,
Aye.
Mike Ailes, aye. Jeff Beatty,
Aye.
Jonathan Trotta,
Aye.
Bob Hartman.
Aye.
Any recusals or abstentions? Or anybody opposed? All right. Great. Moving on to item number 6, receive and take action on tax collector's recommendation of uncollectibles to be transferred to the suspense list. So we have in front of us from our tax collector, Deborah Milano, a memo and backup documentation regarding her recommendation of uncollectible taxes to be transferred to suspense for the 2018 grand list. I will just indicate, just for record for the public, that for the grand list 2016, personal property equaled $17,255.45. Motor vehicle was $24,170.08, and motor vehicle supplemental was $4,311.04. So the total to be transferred that we're looking at is $45,736.57. The one thing I noticed here that might have just been a typo was just on that memo, that second page memo. I think in the statement it said, I think it says and is collectible. Probably should say not collectible, just for clarification purposes. I think we knew that, but it appeared that might have just missed the non-collectible. Does anybody have any questions or concerns regarding those amounts and the recommendation before I put it into a form of a motion?
Mary Jane.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to make a comment more for the
Yeah, go
public
ahead.
than anything else, that the fact that we put these items into suspense does not mean we stop seeking collection of these taxes. They don't just go off the books. The tax collector will continue to collect them as she does all of the past due taxes. It's just that it really goes off against our collection rate.
Okay.
At some point, do you write them off?
Yes. Yes, we
Yeah,
would.
we could-
Yeah.
Particularly the motor vehicle stuff. Somebody moves out of town, out of state, and there's no longer the hammer of Department of Motor Vehicles not allowing them to register a vehicle until they satisfy back due taxes on a vehicle. As you'll note, these are not real estate taxes that we suspend. Those we do not suspend. We put liens and then we go to tax sales on property taxes.
The other thing I would note is with regard to personal property, that the majority of those taxes appear to be related to small businesses that may or may not be still operating. And so they may be, furniture and computers and things like that were levied for personal property taxes, but the entities no longer exist. So that may be one of the reasons why they're not collectible.
Good point.
Is there any other place where you would park that debt besides suspense?
That is the appropriate way to do it as far as the state statutes for tax collection.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on that? All right, so I will put this in the form of motion. Entertain a motion to accept the transfer of $45,736.57 from the 2016 grand list to the suspense tax book. 2018 grand list based on the May 12th, 2020 certification of the town of Guilford tax collector.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Veronica,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Mike, aye. Jeff,
Aye.
Jonathan,
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Great. Thank you all. Oh, any opposed? I didn't think so. We got everybody. So committee reports, building permits. Any questions or any concerns on building permits? We exceeded last year, 10 months in. So that's for single family residential. So nothing further on that. Item number 8, old business. Anything under old business? Or number 9, new business. Or number 10, public forum. Anybody wishing to address the board in public forum? We might have one. Okay. With that, I believe I want to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day. I know it's not going to be anything like we've really experienced before, but hopefully we'll all enjoy it with our families and loved ones. And if not 6 feet distancing in our yards, maybe there's a Zoom call with a hamburger in hand and fireworks. I don't know. Or, well, no, that's 4th of July. We'll do that in June. Or somebody might have fireworks. I don't know.
We always have the meeting. We've only had them every week for the last foreseeable.
We've gotten really good at this, unfortunately, but I will continue to say I can't wait to meet in person again. I miss Michael. I miss our cameraman. Want to see him. Tell him.
Right.
Yeah, anyone sees him, tell him I said hello.
Now, I saw on the
Motion to
news
adjourn.
that they put these people in these 6-foot inner tubes and these racks to move around in the bar in Ocean City, Maryland. So maybe there's hope for Memorial Day.
Fingers crossed. I have heard a motion to adjourn from Ms. Wallace. So
Second?
great. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Have a good
everybody.
holiday.
Bye, everybody.